Bom, 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 bom. I'm going to that boat up in the sky. I'm going to the place where people never die, and where the soda fountain never will run dry. In that most...
When I first moved to Long Island years ago, and my kids were little, I used to yell at them to get out of the gutter, and my next door neighbor, who was from Massachusetts, said, "How could they get out of the gutter? Isn't that what's on your house?" And I said, "No, I come from the Bronx. The Bronx, we played in the gutter. We played punch bowl in the gutter."
Like when I went to Alfred University, they talked like that. That was upstate there near Buffalo. You know, my father gave me $1 to get married. You know, and I go, "Hey, Bab. I don't know who they were talking to for Bab? Who's Bab? Oh, that's me. It's Bob. You know.
The Paradox, that's how we used to call it, the Paradox.
My friend Babes, his real name was Carmine. I didn't even know his name was Carmine until I was an adult. You know, I said, "Who's Carmine? Why are these people calling you Carmine?" He goes, "Well, that's my name." I said, "That's your name," you know. My friend Babes Prezioso and Tony Alley-Oop, Anthony Alley-Oop. We call him Alley-Oop because he was very big and he looked like, Alley-Oop was like a caveman. So if you had a big nose, there was no Nicky nose. And you know, some guys probably wouldn't want me to mention their names, I think, so I better be careful.
My mother used to say, "You want a sandwich?" When I got older, I was still saying sandwich, and people didn't know what I was talking about. And I looked at them like, "Sandwich? A sandwich? What's the matter with you? A sandwich? What's the matter? You got an accent or something?"
On 167th Street, there was a trolley car that ran all the way to the East Bronx on one side and went all the way west to Manhattan on the other side. And that trolley car had the most characteristic sound, like ding, ding, you know, on the trolley car, and these stairs would come down the front, like, and you'd get up on the stairs, and the door would open, and then when they were ready to leave, the stairs would come up and the doors would go and close.
And we'd get on what was called the Morris Avenue trolley. It was not a big trolley, but a tiny one. And it went on Morris Avenue. We'd get off at 164th Street and then walk west to our house.
And the trolleys were somewhat antiquated. You know, they had the ads on the inside, and you pull the string. If you wanted to get off, they had a string. You go, it would knock you out of your seat if you wanted to get off. And sometimes you couldn't push your way out to get off the trolley. But the trolley stopped in the middle of the street. All the tracks are in the middle of the street. Now you might say, was this dangerous? I didn't think of it as being dangerous, but it was, because you got out of the rear or the front of the trolley, those doors and those steps that went down, and there could be cars going alongside the place that you get out of it. So you had to be real careful about it.
We used to have a joke, my sister and I and my father, nothing to do, let's do something. Why don't you go watch the trains? Because the motormen would know, the engineers on the New York Central, going under Gun Hill Road like that, headed towards the next stop, which was Botanical Garden, they'd wave. They'd wave to the children.
My father would bring the newspapers home that he found on the subway. He'd come home with them under his arm. "What do you have today?" "Well, I got the pink edition of the New York Daily News." You know, that was the Bulldog edition, the first one. And he'd always bring the newspaper home when I was sick, whatever, but he'd find them in the subway or in a trash barrel or something.
You didn't take buses and trains if you could walk because you wanted the money to buy food and treats and, hot dogs or ice cream. And I carried it on the rest of my career, actually. I worked for a comedian named Joey Bishop, and he would call us and send us plane money to come to where he was, like in Chicago at the nightclub, and we would take the tickets in case you didn't take the bus. We would go on Greyhound. They finally called, Joey Bishop's the one who brought me to Hollywood. He called from Hollywood. He says, "I'm bringing you out to work on my TV show with Danny Thomas, who's the producer, and I'm sending you the tickets." He says, "Now don't turn them in for those bus tickets. I heard you do that, because I need you right away. Get on the plane. No buses."
You would stand on the fender of the bus and hang on to the top part under the back window. And the people who were sitting in the back of the bus would go like this, "Get out of here, you bad kids, get out of here, get out of here. You're gonna make this man have an accident," stuff like that. And we sort of laughed at them because you never took the bus for more than maybe a half a block. The distance that you'd have to go on a bus sometimes is intolerable. For instance, from Marcy Place to go to Orchard Beach, which we used to call Horseshit Beach. It took, I would say, about an hour and a half to 2 hours, and you could probably drive it now in maybe 30 minutes, 20 minutes. It took you almost a half a day to get there.
Growing up in the Bronx, I had three choices: the Yankees, the Dodgers, and the Giants. And being a New Yorker and from the Bronx, I was a Yankee fan. I rooted for them all growing up.
When you come through that chute and see that green, I was not used to manicured lawns.
I used to join the crowds from different churches and PAL to get in for nothing when we were a kid.
Even if you're paid. I went to 2 World Series where I slept overnight on the cement at Yankee Stadium. I remember the Phillies, 1950. We slept all night on the cement to get into the bleachers and see the World Series game with the Philadelphia Phillies.
Well, Yankee Stadium, to go to those games, my uncle, my father was in the Marine Corps, was in the 40s, World War II was on. He took me to a World Series game, St. Louis Cardinals, New York Yankees, Yankees outfield, Tommy Henrich, Joe DiMaggio, King Kong Keller, Cardinals outfield, Enos Slaughter, Terry Moore, Stan Musial. I mean, great players, great teams. I think the Yankees won that game, but I stood in on the last row in the bleachers, back against the wall of the bleachers, in right center field.
My father used to take me to Yankee Stadium. We'd give the guy at the gate. My father would give him $1 extra sometimes to give us good seats, because in those days, Yankee Stadium was built where they had the posts, and if you didn't give a guy a half a buck or $1 more, they'd put you behind those posts, and you couldn't see the game.
So I took the train up to the stadium, went up to George Steinbrenner, lets me use his box. So I'm in there, and there's one guy in there. And I looked, and it's Joe DiMaggio. God, Joe DiMaggio, the most private, the greatest Yankee of them all. And here I am alone with him. But you don't bother Joe DiMaggio. You don't tell him, I know Ivan Evangelista. It don't mean anything to Joe. So I sit down, and he looks over, he sees me, he says, "How'd you get here so quick?" I figured he knows I'm on a morning show, and I said I took the train up. "Oh, good, that's good, you got here in a hurry." That's all I had to hear. I got up, sat right down next to Joe, and had Joe DiMaggio for 20 uninterrupted minutes, telling him, King Kong Keller, you, Joe, Tommy Henrich, first game, right up there, Joe, right against that the bleachers wall, the last row in the stadium, and had a wonderful conversation with him about those great teams and Yankees and the Bronx in general.
I was sitting on the subway alongside some of the Yankee stars whose names evade me at this moment, but in those days before armored cars and security guards and lawyers and accountants and business managers, they would mingle with the ordinary public.
Coming back to the Yankee Stadium, you get goose pimples a little bit. I remember getting off the team bus, going into the locker room, and there were a lot of firemen and policemen there, and they started hollering to me, "Hey, Donovan, I hope you're better than when you were at Mount St. Michael's." I says, "I don't know."
And of course, I happened to be born into an era when the Yankees never lost. They lost in '55. Elston Howard grounded out to, I think, Jim Gilliam. And the Yankees finally lost to the Dodgers. And I was really depressed. And my sister was a little tactless. They lost the World Series. They lost the World. And your parents get so cranky when you try to kill your sister by choking. I mean, they just, the thumbprints are still there. She's 64 years old.
The things I remember about it was anytime you needed 14 friends in a hurry, all you did was go out in the hallway and whistle, and you had a baseball team.
I had 10 friends in my building alone, not to mention across the street.
I grew up on 187th Street. In fact, the building The building I was born in is still there, the 751 East 187th. And I still have a picture of me and a little horse. And he used to bring little ponies around in those days.
The areas that I lived in was Wilkins Avenue, Boston Road, Stebbins Avenue, Bristow Street, Fox Street, Southern Boulevard, Charlotte Street. In those days, of course, very young, and we were very poor. We didn't have a father home. So we were people that very late at night, we would move out of one apartment building and get into another, and we were able to skip the rent for at least a week or so. We always delayed paying.
My building is right on the corner there, 187th and Camberling. I lived right on top of Lizzie's drugstore when I was a kid. I remember there was Nat's toy store across the street. It was right in the Five Corners, you know, Bishop Perricone. And that's when the stand used to be set up there, and these people singing, and I would open my window, and I had the best seat in the house.
And I remember there was a man came in our backyard at least once a week with his monkey, and he would sing. He was like the street singer with the megaphone, and he'd yell up through the windows. Everybody would throw him out a penny. One day somebody threw him a nickel. I think he retired that time.
I lived on the top floor, so I became the fastest runner in my class in the school.
Yeah, he was.
32, I was the fastest runner in the school. Because I ran up the five flights 100 times a day.
You'd hear people in the streets in the summertime. They'd sit in front of their buildings and eat and talk and read the newspapers before it got dark. The kids would hang around there and play ball. There was always noise in that neighborhood, or people who wouldn't come down, who'd stick their heads out of the window, and they go, "Dottie, what did you say about that?" You could hear them all the way up the block.
And also I had the opportunity to go back to the Bronx and do a motion picture with Paul Newman. And the picture, of course, was Fort Apache, the Bronx, which was the 4-1 precinct on Simpson Street, which is an area where I lived as well. And there was a scene in that particular picture where I threw someone off a roof. And I lived in the building.
Sleep on a fire escape.
Sleep on a fire escape in the summertime because it was too hot. There was no air conditioning at the time, so we used to go out on a fire escape to sleep.
We used to put a fan on one end of the house and put another fan on the other end of the house. And we'd open the windows, and the one fan in the front would blow one way and the other one would take it out the back, you know.
The kitchen was minuscule. The kitchen was like the inside of a closet. And that's where most of the activity took place. There was a table there and chairs, and people would come in from all over the building. They'd talk to my mother. They'd schmooze in either Yiddish or Russian or Polish.
I never had my own room, actually. I shared a little contrived dinette bedroom with my sister until she became a teenager. I'm 4.5 years younger. It was unseemly. So I had a Castro in the living room, and it was an ottoman-sized. Ottoman is supposed to be a footrest. My bed was a footrest. And one time my sister said something so clever. She said, "Shut up and get on your room." You know.
Say I'm from the Bronx. They say, "Oh, what part?" I say Riverdale. They say, "That's not the Bronx." And it's as if people are saying that this borough doesn't deserve the upper class neighborhoods like Fieldston and Wave Hill along the Hudson. Like, there's something about the Bronx that it shouldn't have those. You know, that's not. Well, that's as much the Bronx as any place else, and I've never quite understood that sort of reflex association. You say Bronx, they say where. You say Riverdale, they say that's not the Bronx. I mean, I came from the blue collar, if you want to call it that section, you know, near Van Cortlandt Park, but I've never understood that.
Every Easter, I used to get a new Easter suit, and I would be very, new spring suit, and I would be very, very disappointed if Easter Sunday were 1, too cold, 2, snowy, rainy, whatever it was, that I couldn't wear my Easter suit.
I mean, my mother had 7 kids. We spent hours and days in Alexander's. I got lost in Alexander's department store, as I thought if I stood in front of the Barbie doll long enough that my mother would buy it for me. But there were so many kids that she didn't realize I was still standing there, and I got lost and I got in trouble then.
My brother and I would go to buy Hanukkah presents at Alexander's, and then when we'd buy presents for each other, we'd split up because we wouldn't want to tell each other what we were buying for each other. And then invariably we'd bang into each other in the record department.
Spent a lot of time in Fordham, too. They had all the stores. DeViga, Vim's. You could buy records there. Baseball gloves.
Hijinks, which was everyone's favorite store on Jerome Avenue. It was the sporting goods store. And that's where you got your Clinton jacket, and that's where you got your baseball glove and your bat.
We always went shopping for clothes at the cheapest place we could find. When I was young, when I was 11, 12 years old, I had one pair of pants. I couldn't afford any more. I had one pair of shoes.
You could live in the Bronx without buying any clothes. Nothing. Shoes, socks, underwear. Everything was passed down. The neighbor would have a son who was your size. The kid now was 10 years older than you were. The mothers saved all the clothes. They'd save everything. Baby carriages. Anything that could be recycled would be saved. I always got hand-me-downs, either from my cousin Irving or my cousin Milty or from Bobby or from God knows what. So I was always wearing someone else's socks that hadn't been worn out or somebody else's suits. You know, after graduation from public school, suits or pants or jeans or whatever it was. I never had my own real clothes until after my bar mitzvah. And the reason I had them is because I had some money that I made, so I'd find a t-shirt or I'd find something that I'd like to wear.
There were cheese boxes those days, and we used to get the ends of these boxes and use for hockey pucks.
I played hockey, roller hockey, and my mother made me Life magazines. She wrapped them around my legs as shin guards. We didn't have any equipment, but she had managed to take Life magazines, which were thick, and put it on my shin guards.
Football game was not with a football. Sometimes it was a rolled up newspapers with tape wrapped around it. If you had a real football, you were the captain of the team.
I'd get the cheese boxes out of the trash at the markets, and I'd go and find some dirt on the lot. You know, I'd go and get the dirt on the lot, and I'd get these seeds, and I'd plant the seeds and put these boxes, these cheese boxes with seeds on the fire escape. And you know, I never grew any vegetables that were worth anything, but I had little cherry tomatoes, and everyone would go, oh, look, David's a farmer. Look what he's going.
To get to Fordham Road, for instance, usually would be 15 cents. And we had a choice. You can use that to get there and another 15 cents to come back, or get a Frankfurter with mustard and sauerkraut and a Coke. And oftentimes we'd walk to 20 or 30 blocks so that we could indulge in a Frankfurter with mustard and sauerkraut, or a ice cream, soda, or any treat that we wanted.
Have you ever wished you could have a Bronx childhood reunion with your friends, your classmates, and your memories? Well, now you can. Back in the Bronx magazine is your ticket back to the borough of your youth. And for a limited time, you can get a free 6-month subscription that instantly transports you to the streets and stories that shaped you. Each issue brings you around a dozen true Bronx stories. Shopping on Fordham Road, eating on Arthur Avenue, ice cream sundaes at Crumb's, the kitchen sink at Jan's, summer days at Orchard Beach, cheering in the old Yankee Stadium, even trips to Freedom Land. It's 32 pages of laughter, nostalgia, and Bronx pride. A reunion in print that arrives every 3 months. You'll even receive a free picture of your Bronx building as it appeared in the 1940s, 50s, or 60s, and a free 1958 Jan's menu to stir those sweet memories. Now, this is a limited time offer, so call 1-800-727-6695 today and claim your free 6-month subscription, plus your Bronx building photo and 1958 Jan's menu. Because Back in the Bronx isn't just a magazine, it's the Bronx you remember, brought back to life one story at a time.
The code of conduct was quite strict. We wore ties every day, boys. Girls wore dresses with bows in the back.
We used to have a teacher who used to giving us the knuckle, a gym teacher. We misbehaved, just give the knuckle over the head, and we'd get right into place.
I was the captain of the monitors in the school. Now, you probably don't know what the monitors were. The monitors were like the cops. You know, they were at the corners, getting kids going across the streets, or they were on the stairways, you know, guarding people going up.
We were given dog tags, which we were told rather tactlessly by the teacher could withstand 10,000 degrees centigrade, you know. Said your name and address and your religion. My Heb, I swear it said Heb, Heb.
Everybody cracked their gum. And even in the hallways, I remember we used to take it, chew it, and then put it under the desk. If you remember, I'm sure that when you sat down, by the time all your clothes had other people's gum all over it.
I rode to high school every day on a bicycle up the long hill leading to Boston Road. From the West Bronx, I went to the East Bronx, up the hill, parked the bicycle in the basement of Morris High School, and went to class.
I remember being in kindergarten and having one line in a little play, and it was, "I am Patrick Potato, this is my cousin, Mrs. Tomato," and I heard laughter in the room, and that was the bug that bit me.
I remember we played Mount St. Michael, and there was a fight. Now here, all the priests are there and everything, and unfortunately the fight was started by a guy named Slimowitz, who was of Jewish faith, but we didn't want to get into that, so we made believe that a guy named McCaldy started the fight. We didn't want to say which Slimowitz started the fight. We'll be here all night fighting.
There were certain eccentric teachers. Doc Storch, who got away for years, a chemistry professor, teacher, wore a lab coat, little old man. Towards the end of the class, he would pretend he was a shooting gallery target. All right, boys, I'm building for that dream house. He'd take out a cigar box that had a lot of coins in it, and he would go back and forth like a bear in the shooting gallery, and you threw coins at him, and he picked them up and collected them.
Betting was what kept Clinton from punching each other all the time, because they bet on everything. I bet 4 kids here have peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. Who wants to take it? I'll bet. It's a bet.
I was poorly prepared. When I went to Alfred University, and co-ed, I hadn't had a woman in the classroom in 3 years, and I mean, any leg without hair on it, I couldn't stop staring at it,
I went out and I bought some Rit dye and replaced the water with Rit dye, so when she was doing the science class in the afternoon, she has her arms in the water showing how these caissons work, and her arms were as red as you could possibly see, and it took her weeks to get rid of that color on her arms. It was hysterical. She had to wear long sleeves all the time.
Yeah, I won the Celebrity Jeopardy prize, which was $50,000. I won it by $1 over Carson Kressley. The end of the game, you get a chance to bet some of your earnings, and then whoever winds up with the most earnings and answers the question correctly is the winner. And so he bet, for some reason, $999, and not knowing what his score was, I bet $1,000, and I won by $1. And so Cardinal Hayes won the $50,000. Now let me tell you what else I'm doing. I'm going on a show later this month called "Are You Smarter Than a Fifth Grader?" And whatever I win, I'm going to donate to Cardinal Hayes, but it could be $1 million. I mean, if I could remember what I learned in the 5th grade at A Lady of Solace, I'll be a lock, but I don't know. I watched the show. Didn't know that 5th graders were that advanced these days. But it's going to be fun. I'll do my best.
Senora Moscoso was a very dignified woman who was not a widow, but wore black in any event. Anyway, boys sometimes would play a trick, and they'd purposely drop something. And Mrs. Moscoso was a matronly 55-year-old with a big bosom and a low-cut dress, and they'd drop something, and so she'd bend over. And it took a while for her to figure out they were trying to see her breasts. And finally she says, "You fellows, you pigs, you want to see my breasts?" I had to change my pants when I got home from school, put on my dungarees, that's an old word, go downstairs, play curveball, stickball, a box baseball, shooting tickets, what we call tickets, baseball cards, Wild West cards.
The milk box had 9 separate compartments, 3 in the bottom, 3 in the middle, and 3 on top. And we'd put it against the wall, and we'd get a Spalding, the old Spalding, bounce the ball, and if it landed in the thing, it was a single. If it bounced out, it was out. It was a way to play baseball.
Well, you'd either go to the St. Raymond Schoolyard, or you'd go to the handball courts in Parkchester in the North Quadrant, where there were, of course, the inevitable strike zones painted on the handball court, and you'd play strikes.
the school had a brick wall, and somebody had painted a strike zone on the wall. So we had this strike zone on the wall at 81. And we used to play there a lot, and of course it was a nice flat surface. When we couldn't play there, we'd go over to St. Margaret's, but St. Margaret's was one of those old stone buildings. So the stones, of course, had jagged edges. You had to swing at every pitch, or you had to go chase the ball, because when it bounced off the wall, it went this way, it went that way.
And these women would sit out there with their folding chairs and carriages, play someplace else, you know.
There was the PAL. You went, the cops said, you're going to get into trouble? No, okay, here's a bat and a ball. That was it. They didn't come to the games, the cops. They gave you a bat and a ball if you didn't rob somebody that week.
It snowed much more frequently then, and accumulations were much more frequent. And I lived on a gigantic hill, and it was my dream to have a sledding thing that would last like 2 and 3 minutes. These lasted a few seconds.
I used to say I was so poor when in the winter I didn't have a sled to go sleigh running. I didn't have a sled. I used to slide down the hill on my cousin. She wasn't bad. That was the big joke of the day.
And we had 22 kids of my age. We probably were about 10 years old. And we played a game of tackle football in the middle of the street.
Cut out to the Buick, make a quick cut at the Studebaker, go straight out to the Ford Woody.
We had Mr. Machine, which was like this robot that was, which I mean, I don't know what to say about it. I have a feeling we broke it soon after we got it, so I don't know how long it lasted. We played electric baseball, which was just the stupidest game when you think about it.
I used to love the radio shows. Jack Armstrong, the All American Boy, Bobby Breen, Tom Mix, Dick Tracy, Superman. And my mother, about 5 o'clock, the radio serials go on, and she'd bring them my meals to me, like a king.
When television first came out, my neighbor, her son was into electronics, and they had this tube that we watched with all the batteries and things, all the Hoosies, and we every evening they would have. You think it was sounds silly now, but everybody in the building practically went next door to watch this television.
But the Paradise Theater, I also did. Remember a show I did with Alan Freed and Chuck Berry. I was just starting out. I had recorded I Wonder Why, and they had a presentation of Rock Around the Clock after it was out for a while. And Alan Freed and Chuck Berry had come up to the theater, and that was live, right in the Paradise.
The only thing sexual I ever saw was Elvis Presley when I was a teenager, and they set me up to my room because he wiggled. Remember when he was on the Ed Sullivan Show? I got hysterical crying so much that they finally called me down because they showed him from the waist up.
My dad was very sympathetic to my ambitions, so he rigged a microphone in the bathroom and this long cord, electrical cord, into the family radio so that I had imaginary football games, imaginary baseball games that I could broadcast from the bathroom.
DC Comics, Superman, Batman, 10 cents a copy, mortified when it went up to 12 cents, unbelievable that it went up to 15 cents.
My aunt had a candy store on Tremont Avenue when we go over there, which was a big treat. I would sit in the corner and read Tales from the Crypt, comic books. So the rotting flesh, disgusting thing. From then on, I came home from school and my mother put down a salami sandwich. Like it's a dead body.
We played electric football, which was, it was just this magnetic board, and you put all the football players, and, and all the players move around. And it had, I think, this little foam ball that was probably about that big.
We went to a theater called the Zenith Theater. And the Zenith Theater played a double feature Yiddish movie. And the reason my mother took me to the theater was because when you have 2 admissions, you get 2 plates or 2 forks or somebody else from a part of, she'd go there to get the dishes. And I'd sit there and I'd watch Moshe Oisha, the singing rabbi, or Jaime and the Meshuggahs, which was some comedian who went to the crazy house. and some of these very deep old, Yiddish movies. And she would go home with dishes and silverware, and she was the happiest person in the world to do that.
There was an old-time theater called the Windsor Theater. I was never there. My older brother said he saw the Three Stooges live there. It's on Kingsbridge Road as you turn up to go toward Poe Park.
The matrons used to always be telling us to shut up, and we used to throw things, popcorn at her and candy bars. And I remember one time I went to see The Tingler, that Vincent Price movie. I think it's from 57, 56, something like that. And they had little buzz things underneath the seats, so that when that little shock thing came on the screen, you get a little psst underneath your screen, and we were all screaming. It was great.
One of the first comedians to come in to the Improv in New York was Adam Keefe. Remember him? Brilliant guy. And all of a sudden he's doing his routine, and he mentions, I think it was maybe it was the Luxor Theater? Luxor Theater. And I went, oh my God. And then we started talking, and we're from the same neighborhood.
Paradise Theater was when you had a sort of a major date or someone you really wanted to impress. You'd get on the bus, Pelham Parkway, and White Plains Road, and ride the bus into Fordham, and then get off right on the Grand Concourse and walk a block or so. And the Paradise Theater was really heaven on earth, Stars were in the ceiling, and it was just so beautifully done inside. In those days, they really built movie theaters.
We always sat in the balcony. When we sat in the balcony, we would look at they had stars. The stars would twinkle, and they also had clouds. The clouds that actually moved through the stars. It was quite beautiful.
My first date with my wife Susan, 52 years ago, the Paradise was, top shelf. It was like that's where you went. We sat way high up in the balcony, and I was trying to get close to her any way I could, and with the arm and my first kiss, and we're still together after all these years.
And the movie theaters were jammed, absolutely jammed, and kids would do nothing but eat, talk, and watch the movie. That's why today you never want to go to the movie with a kid from the Bronx, because they still talk through the whole movie.
The Whitestone Drive-In was the first time I ever went to a drive-in, and my husband at that time had a I think it was a 68 Catalina, Pontiac Catalina, and it was quite big, so you got to see the movie somewhat.
Some of the real guys, like I said, Eddie Mush was really Eddie Mush in the movie. That was Eddie Mush. I mean, we tried to cast him, and I remember Robert De Niro said, how we're going to get somebody, because I explained to him what Eddie Mush was like, and we just couldn't find anybody. So he goes, where's the real Eddie Mush? So I said, well, he's in the neighborhood. So he says, well, really? He says, let's go up there and see him, So we got in a car, we went up to the neighborhood, and I said, well, if he's anywhere, he's probably at OTB. And there he was, right in front of OTB, cursing at people and yelling, and I got out of the limo, and I walked over to him, and I said, Eddie, he goes, hey, how you doing? He goes, hey, I hear you're making a movie about the neighborhood. I said, yeah. I says, listen, Robert De Niro wants to talk to you. He goes, what? He goes, get the hell out of here. You're full of shit. I says, no. He's in the car. He goes, I go, come over to the car. He goes, I ain't going over to no car. I owe too many people money. I said, he thought I was like setting him up or something. I said, will you come over to the car? He's really in the car. And he said, all right. I had to finally drag him over to the car, and the window goes down, and Bob looks at him, and he looks at Bob, and he goes, holy shit, it is you. And my friend Dave Salerno, he played Frankie Coffee Cake. But the funniest thing was, I was an actor, I was studying to be an actor all my life, and I would do anything for a part. And here it is, and I remember De Niro saying to Dave, he said, listen, I want you to come and read a few lines. Could you come Tuesday at 1 o'clock? And Dave said, 1 o'clock? Can I come at 3? I just want to make the double at Aqueduct. And Bob said, yeah, okay. I mean, it was like, these guys were like incredible, man, He did the crap game scene in Bronx Tale. Those were really all street guys. And it was really funny because Robert De Niro wanted Bob, you know the way, everybody knows the way Bob is, he wanted to use real money. We usually use fake money. So we had $5,000 of the studio money to use. So we did it the first day, we're using the real money, and at the end of the day, the prop guy walks over to us and says, look, you know, we're $1,200 short. So we said, oh, Jesus God. So the next day we get there again, and we tell the guys, we go, hey, you know, we're $1,200 short, we can't do, well, I don't know how that happened, not me, oh, not me. So we film again with the real money, and $700 short the next day. So the prop guy goes, look, we're another $700. So the next day we come up and we go, look, Bob says, I'm going to stop this thing. I'm going to have to get all new people, which we couldn't do. It was too late. He was lying because we were shooting. We already had them on film. But we got to have the money back by the end of the day. So I don't know what you do. So we filmed again, and we had all the money back by the end of the day.
Have you ever wished you could have a Bronx childhood reunion with your friends, your classmates, and your memories? Well, now you can. Back in the Bronx magazine is your ticket back to the borough of your youth. And for a limited time, you can get a free 6-month subscription that instantly transports you to the streets and stories that shaped you. Each issue brings you around a dozen true Bronx stories. Shopping on Fordham Road, eating on Arthur Avenue, ice cream sundaes at Crumb's, the kitchen sink at Jan's, summer days at Orchard Beach, cheering in the old Yankee Stadium, even trips to Freedom Land. It's 32 pages of laughter, nostalgia, and Bronx pride. A reunion in print that arrives every 3 months. You'll even receive a free picture of your Bronx building as it appeared in the 1940s, 50s, or 60s, and a free 1958 Jan's menu to stir those sweet memories. Now, this is a limited time offer, so call 1-800-727-6695 today and claim your free 6-month subscription, plus your Bronx building photo and 1958 Jan's menu. Because Back in the Bronx isn't just a magazine, it's the Bronx you remember, brought back to life one story at a time.
Every neighborhood had their own candy stores, and ours was Freddy's on 165th Street and Teller Avenue.
2 blocks away, there was Artie's Luncheonette, and everybody used to cut out of school and go over to Artie's Luncheonette.
On Bury Avenue, on one side of the street, we had Flo's Candy Store, but on the other side, we had Katz's Candy Store, where the few Jewish people of the neighborhood hung out, and he made great egg creams, though.
They would go, you know, we'll meet you at Louis the Jew, which was the candy store. Louis was a sweet man, a really great guy, and he used to let us read the comic books and not get mad at us, so I liked him a lot.
You'd stop at the delicatessen and you have a knish or a hot dog on the way home getting onto the train.
Went to Howard Johnson's, and I loved the hot dogs. The hot dogs were the greatest. In those days, they were the best. On a toasted bun with mustard and relish. Fabulous. Fabulous.
I love the Mellow Rolls, and that was a kind of a funny ice cream because it wasn't traditionally what you would see today as a scoop, but it was almost like a cylinder, and it fit into a cylinder type of a cone. And I used to love the Mellow Roll. You would peel off, actually, a piece of paper from the Mellow Roll and then put the ice cream into the cone.
The great attraction in the fall was to go in there, and for 2 cents, you could get a piece of halava that was really delicious. In the cold weather, I used to love that. And then they had they introduced chocolate-covered halava, and that was better than anything.
And lime Rickies was really big. Sometimes there were raspberry lime Rickies, but it was mostly just lime Rickies, and we kind of felt like we were big shots drinking lime Rickies.
A penny would be enough money to have the dealer in the candy store walk with you for 20 minutes while you decided how to spend that penny. He'd walk with you up and down the aisle, helping you to choose, making suggestions. He would say, Joey, here's something good, here's something good. And he would make you an accumulation of different items, and at the end, you'd give him the penny, and he was so thrilled. A quarter, that was gigantic money. I mean, nobody had a quarter.
And back in the 50s, it was $6.25. There's still one Jan's ice cream parlor remaining in Hillside, and the kitchen sink today is $38.65.
Now, that was a serious day. Right after the movies, you go to Jan's, have a huge sundae.
Back in the 1950s, you could actually buy a real kitchen sink that you put in the kitchen for $38.65.
If a guy was doing well
and he ordered an ice cream soda, you know, for 35 cents. He was doing great, you know, he was in big time, you know.
Ben Weber's Pickle Store. They had the best sour pickles you could ever find anywhere. For my whole life, I've been searching for a Ben Weber pickle, and you can't find a Ben Weber pickle, which is one made in brine that the guy made by himself in these big barrels, and he used to have the nickel pickle. The nickel pickle was almost looked like a burrito, it was so big.
There was the Laurels and the Deuce's Wild, which was in the Bronx Tale. Deuce's Wild was a Bronx Tale, and actually that was the name of our club, the Deuce's Wild and the Laurels, which was great. So, they still have social clubs back there now. You know, we would paint the windows black and put a name on it. And everybody hung out at Schweller's restaurant. There was also Katz's Delicatessen. Some went to Katz's, but Schweller's is where you really had your first beer, because sometimes you could get served before you were 21. Yeah, I was with a band in the 70s called Razumachaz, which was my band, and I appeared all over the Golden Hour and My Way and Fantasy East and a lot of those on Pelham Parkway, yeah, a lot of those places there. We used to have a big following, and it was fun. It's a fun time for me. Maxim's on Jerome, it's great. Office Lounge. I think that's where I started.
I remember Tony Rhoda. Rhoda's on a Friday night. There were more guns in there than there were in Fort Knox, because Tony Rhoda used to cash the cops' checks, and they would all show up there on a Friday night. And I remember one time some poor soul from the mental hospital down near Jacoby there wandered in, apparently escaped and wandered into Rhoda's and started creating a disruption, and found 40 guns staring at him.
Back then, everybody would have those wooden folding chairs, and we would all hang out outside, and my parents would hang outside, and people would sit outside, and there was always like the neighborhood. There was Min and Gil and Mary Lou and all these people that would constantly always be outside.
You know what Morte is? Morte is Italian number game.
And you
play by just throwing out
it's like
fingers,
rock, paper,
and
scissors.
calling it
But you gotta
the
anticipate.
addition of all the fingers out in an Italian number. If it's six,
You got to anticipate what the number's
three
going
and
to be.
three, you would say sei.
You
Sei
got
is six. If you got
and-
six,
and you win
won
the point.
You win whatever points you're playing
And you
for.
play for cigars, and that's what all the men in the neighborhood did every night. Everybody hung out in front
You
of the
heard
candy
that
store.
Morte game
from
going
screaming
on.
Out, all you heard was "Say Otto." And
We were such good kids. It was a much more innocent time. There were so-called rocks. We never heard the word greasers. Rocks. Peg pants, duck's ass haircuts. The Fordham Baldies. The Baldies are coming. You know, they were this kind of juvenile, delinquent, rock around the clock.
When I saw them, they weren't bald. I think that was a misconception. I think there was the initiation was you shaved your head, but then you let it grow. You know, they didn't stay with, keep all their head shaves. No, but I remember some of them who I knew were baldies, were tough guys. Wow, yeah.
if I ever came home with a jacket, you know, with a baldy jacket, his father would have killed me. I mean, you know, all my
My mother, my father, you could never even wear dark glasses when we were kids because they were afraid.
They were all
You
friends of ours.
Trying to hide your eyes. What are you hiding your eyes? You're about smacking the head. You never wear glasses.
You went north of 166th Street, and if you weren't by yourself, you had a problem. And it wasn't gangs or anything like that. It just they didn't like you.
If you had an argument with somebody that was a fist fight, two things happened, or one or two things. You became very best friends after that, or if you walked down the street and you saw each other, one guy across the street went to the other side of the street, and you just avoided each other forever.
You know, they carried zip guns and garrison belts because we were always fighting with other neighborhoods.
My neighborhood in the Bronx, there were like 4 things that were respected. We play ball, you could punch somebody if you dressed well, because you got the girls, but I wasn't good at any of those 3. The 4th thing they respected was if you were funny. So I took the funny road.
I remember dropping a guy one time at a dance because he called me a dirty Mick, even though he was Italian and I was Italian. But it didn't make any difference because he would have called me whatever he wanted to call me. It just happened that I looked Irish.
My mother wouldn't allow me to go out with a boy unless he picked me up, and this fella, Peter Cavella from West Palm Square said, I can't come into the turf on Bury Avenue. So he came with a sweatshirt hooded up and the dungaree jacket, and he sneaked back to the Bury Avenue subway station to get out of the neighborhood.
Ragusa family, there was one of the Ragusas could take a rope and tie it to an ice truck and put the rope in his mouth and pull it. This was called entertainment in the Bronx. And these, let's go, he's going to pull the ice truck with his teeth. Let's all gather around. And you went, you got a little bridge chair, you sat, you watched this.
Friday nights, we would take a little trip to Orchard Beach and steam up the car windows. Yeah, that was what we did. Definitely a very interesting place to go.
We also went to Jerome Cascade's pool till they told us that's where you catch polio. So suddenly it wasn't so popular.
When Jonas Salk's vaccine became available, I mean, that was marvelous. But you know what? It was all in stride. Rocket ships and jet airplanes, and I remember having an argument with my friend. Get out of here, there's no such thing as a plane without a propeller. He said, no, they're called jets. I said, get out of here. I was a little boy, you know. It was almost taken as, it was such a wonderful advance, and yet, well, we expect that, you know.
Bum 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 bum
Go up to a park like Van Cortlandt Park, which was really a nice park. It had a lot of green area, and they had a little area we could rent boats. It was a joke also. This place was like a bathtub. You know, you rent a boat there. Where are you going to go to?
The Bronxdale swimming pool?
Well, tell me about it.
I should have told you that when you said, how did you keep cool? It was right across the street, gleaming white, you know, and a big, beautiful pool. And my God, it was so crowded. It was packed, but it was our way to escape. It was a big thrill. It was 35 cents to get into the pool for a day.
If you would give in your house key or some item of value, maybe a library card or something else, they would give you a game to play. And I remember always taking out either Chinese checkers and playing with my friends, or ping pong for the ping pong table that they had.
Where they have the tennis rackets now in Bronx Park, tennis courts, was an ice skating rink. And went on that in the winter, of course, the ball fields in the summer, and football in the... We really used the park, and thank God there was a park there. You know, it kept us all out of trouble. We really got involved in our sports. It was, you know, a big deal for us.
When I moved out to Long Island as popularly known, I remembered I was only out there a short while, and I remember saying to my next door neighbor, we just moved out here from the Bronx, and I said, look at this, I already have flowers growing. I had a nice sea of yellow. Oh, was it beautiful? And I was so proud of it. Matter of fact, I was out there watering with the hose, and she said to me, Beverly, those are dandelions.
When you were a kid growing up in the Bronx, everyone has a job.
I delivered ice in the Bronx to apartment buildings where I had to walk up 4 floors with chunks of ice on my back.
The worst summer job in the world was carrying an 80-pound tank of orangeade through the sand of Orchard Beach. I did that for a year and a half. Let me tell you something. I used to come home, my shoulders bleeding from carrying that stuff. And you got a penny a cup. A penny a cup, and I used to make $30 a day. Can you imagine that?
I used to clean boilers. I worked for a guy who used to climb into boilers in people's homes and clean the long pipes that were in the boilers. I used to come home black from head to toe. I mean, with soot all over me, you know.
And the only way you actually made any money was they gave you 80 cups, and you had to bring back $8.
You beat them.
Yeah, well, you beat them because the thing held about 84 cups. If somebody wanted a refill, you were supposed to throw the cup away. What you did was you refilled the same cup. You kept the whole dime now. See, that's the only way you made any money.
My grandparents actually owned a fish store on White Place, inside a market where there were about 5 or 6 different stores.
My father was a bus driver, and I would sit behind him, and he would sometimes get me off the street. He says, "Nah, come on, ride with me," and I would ride with him. And
I also delivered the Bronx Home News. I don't know if anybody remembers that now, but it was an offshoot of the New York Post. And I'd come back from Hayes, I'd go to the store where all the papers were sitting in the bundle for each route, and I would go right up Kruger Avenue. I had my own street, right up Kruger, all the way to Bronx, to Pelham Parkway, around and down the side which faces Bronx Park, and served that for a year or two.
We had a tailor shop. The guy ran a dry cleaning store in his apartment. Can you imagine? Dry cleaning store in his apartment. And he had a reputation for touching the wrong parts of women when he was fixing their dresses. But I guess the women who wanted it would go in there all the time. And all the guys in the neighborhood would try to get peeks off the side of the building to see what was going on in the dressing room. Very interesting place.
And then I also had a route in the Bronx, inland, and one of my customers was Jake LaMotta. And Jake would be there in his underwear on a summer night, playing stickball with the kids. Had a beautiful blonde wife, and he was the only one who gave me a tip. He gave me a quarter tip, but I always remember him for that.
And as a shoe shine boy, I really got screwed because there was a guy who used to shine the cops' shoes on 170th Street, free. So when I came in as a kid, about age 10, with my little shoe shine box, I bought the polish and all the stuff at the local Woolworth store. I spent about $3, which is a lot of money, to buy the brush and the stuff to clean the top of the shoes and the polish and the rags. And then I built this little shoe thing that you put your foot on, didn't mean to scare you, but put your foot on so that the foot would stay steady, so you didn't shine the guy's socks. Well, this guy told the cops he didn't want me in the neighborhood. So one day, these guys in the 42nd or 44th precinct, I think it was up in High Bridge, they told me that I couldn't do this without a license. License? I'm 10 years old. What the hell do I know from a license? And they took my little shoe shine box and they put it on the corner. There was like sewers on the corners of the streets at 107th Street and Walton Avenue, right near the Barasini store where the candy was. The candy stores used to have Barasini stores. And they kicked it into the sewer. I was so hurt and shattered, I didn't know what to do. So I went home and I told my father what the guy did, and he said, "Those cops why are they doing this to you?" He says, "You got to be smarter than they are." I said, "What do I do, Dad?" They took $3 of my money. So my dad very sweetly gave me the money to buy stuff for a new shine box. And he said, "Why don't you go down to Jerome Avenue, get to know the cop who's down there, and you shine his shoes for free. And that way, they won't kick your shoe shine box down the sewer, and it's out of this guy's territory."
All my friends are successful. A lot of my friends are all successful. My friend Phil Foley, is a lawyer. My friend Frank Oriema is, I think, a superintendent of schools. And even the guys who weren't even doctors or lawyers. And my friend Babes Prezioso did an incredible life for his family, worked 3 jobs. So all the guys that I grew up with really made something out of themselves, and I'm very proud of all of them.
My grandmother had a grocery store, and she used to send us bread and some canned goods. My mother used to make lentil soup, and it was a delicacy for us. She'd take bread that was 2-3 days old, Italian bread, and put it in a bowl and heat up the lentils with hot water. And when it got to a point where the lentils were done, she would pour the lentils and the hot water over the Italian bread. And that was our meal. That was our dinner.
I mean, when you went into the apartment houses, you could just smell the Polish people with the kielbasa and the Italian people. They got the gravy going.
On Friday night, you smelled fademsta chicken or roasted chicken or other kinds of meats and things they're making for the Shabbos, which was early in the day they did it because they didn't obviously cook after dark. All the floors smelled differently. It always had this smell of fresh baked challah and cookies and cakes, and everyone ate. That's all they did was eat and talk.
My mother used to make the best sauce, the best brajol. Brajol is a rolled beef, and she made the best meatballs, though. Her meatballs could float right out of here. They were that good.
And I remember my grandmother and my mom sending me to the store to get American bread. And when I got older, people said, "What's American bread?" I said, "American bread. It's usually silver cup." They mean white bread? I says, "Yeah, American bread." Because it distinguished between that and Italian bread.
My mother used to fry the meatballs first, and then she'd put them in the gravy. So what I would do, while she was frying them, I'd go in and steal them out of the frying pan. And I would eat them before she put them in the gravy.
And there were 2 Chinese restaurants on 107th Street where we lived. And you'd walk in there, you saw everyone except the rabbi with his talis. His wife would be in there. Everyone would be eating this Chinese food. And my mother, who was the Rebbitzins' daughter, she always said, "Well, I'm not eating anything that's not kosher." And I thought to myself, Mom, the oil that they cook in it isn't kosher, and you're eating things on one plate with the same silverware. How could it, but it wasn't dairy versus meat. But they loved the Chinese food so much that they would even put their religion on the line to eat it.
Have you ever wished you could have a Bronx childhood reunion with your friends, your classmates, and your memories? Well, now you can. Back in the Bronx magazine is your ticket back to the borough of your youth. And for a limited time, you can get a free 6-month subscription that instantly transports you to the streets and stories that shaped you. Each issue brings you around a dozen true Bronx stories. Shopping on Fordham Road, eating on Arthur Avenue, ice cream sundaes at Crumbs, the kitchen sink at Jan's, summer days at Orchard Beach, cheering in the old Yankee Stadium, even trips to Freedom Land. It's 32 pages of laughter, nostalgia, and Bronx pride. A reunion in print that arrives every 3 months. You'll even receive a free picture of your Bronx building as it appeared in the 1940s, 50s, or 60s, and a free 1958 Jan's menu to stir those sweet memories. Now, this is a limited time offer, so call 1-800-727-6695 today and claim your free 6-month subscription, plus your Bronx building photo and 1958 Jan's menu. Because Back in the Bronx isn't just a magazine, it's the Bronx you remember, brought back to life one story at a time.
My grandfather, we moved to Pelham Parkway, Teeman area in the Bronx. He used to smoke a guinea stinker and had a parakeet. And the bird used to land on the guinea stinker, and he used to blow what are those circles. One day the bird jumped on his glass and drank his wine and got drunk when he saved the bird.
Grandma would always have a big Sunday dinner. It would be 20, 25 of us around a table eating. Families on
Bingo was big on the holidays.
Yeah, holiday your father would call bingo.
My grandfather used to make wine in the basement, and when we were kids, he would buy a truckload of grapes, and him and my uncle would crush the grapes and make barrels of wine in the basement, and they lined them up in the basement.
My grandparents actually came over on the Mayflower. This is not well known. They had the buckled shoe concession on board. They saw a need. They went. The line was gorgeous. But they love buckles, these pilgrims.
Every morning, I would watch him walk up to Morris Avenue, where there was a liquor store, and he would carry down 4 gallons of Gallo, or whatever cheap wine he could buy, 2 in each shopping bag, and he would bring them into the basement and empty them into the old gallon jugs that he sold to his paisans. Those jugs, what was that stuff that we used to get to wash the clothes in the, what was it called? Clorox or something. They used to sell it door to door, right? And he used to save those bottles, and he would transfer the Gallo into these bottles and sell it to his paisans for $5 a gallon, and he paid $1 a gallon for it, and they loved it. Nothing like Miguel's wine. It's the best.
My father and mother didn't want me to talk Italian, and when I used to go visit my grandpa, I used to get very upset because I speak English to him, because I used to go there and help him wash the steps and all. He got very angry.
My father whistled, everything stopped. You had to be there at that table.
My parents were my heroes, they're great people, I mean, they always tell me, what you've done for us the past 20 years, And I go, whatever I've done, if it was another 100 years, I could never make up for what they did for me. A real part of Bronx Tale was my father wrote on this little index card, "The saddest thing in life is wasted talent." And that really comes from, there was a fighter in the neighborhood named Billy Bello. And Billy Bello was a great fighter. 17 years old, he fought Gaspar Ortega for the middleweight championship. I mean, incredible talent. and Bello died of an overdose of drugs. They found him, I think, on a rooftop. And my father was he was devastated by that because he thought this kid had an incredible amount of talent. And when I remember him coming home, and I was a kid, and he told me this guy died, and I think that's where that came from, about my father said he wasted all that talent, and he didn't want me, obviously, to fall prey to anything like that, so.
If some woman complained to my mother that I was fresh, or my father, say, my father was the fearsome one, my mother, there would be no question. He would take her word at face value.
I was so sickly that they used to put my mother would put my clothes on the radiator when there was heat, so when I would get up out of bed in the morning, I had warm clothes to put on. But my sister Penny would sneak in and take the clothes and put it in the refrigerator and then put it back on the radiator. So I would get up, coughing, I would, to be frozen. And then she would get yelled at because we knew Penny did it. My sister Ronnie was a lovely girl.
I'm going to that malt shop in the sky. I'm going to the place where people never die, and where the soda fountain never will run dry. In that malt shop in the sky. I'm going where they play the jukebox all day long, and everybody's singing a brand new song. I guess I'm gonna make it my turn home. Yes, that malt shop in the sky, where there'll be lots of falsetto, lady of faith.
This is a quick shot of West Farm Square in the mid-1930s. Very bustling, busy area. This is Fordham Road looking west, and coming in from the right, the trolley making a turn is coming off Webster Avenue onto Fordham Road. Very busy intersection at this point, and this is again in the mid-1930s. It's a wonder they didn't get killed driving there. This looks like after a game at Yankee Stadium. They used to have the trolleys on 163rd Street. And it was very crowded at that point because everybody was in a rush to go home after the game. And you can see if they didn't get into one trolley, people would just go to the next one. And they were all filled up. Again, looks like it's the mid-1930s. Okay, this is 178th Street Viaduct where the trolleys and the cars ran over into Manhattan at 178th Street. Again, we're looking in the 1930s. That was a combination waiting room and bathroom. Okay, this is on the 3rd Avenue L at 143rd Street. At this point, it is still double-decked. You had the express on the top and the local on the lower level. And the train looks like it's riding north going toward 149th Street. These are gate cars running on the 3rd Avenue L. These were originally Queens cars. These are all wooden cars, and you had to have a conductor ride between each two cars because those gates were manually operated. This looks like it was on a fan trip because the name is painted on the tops of the cars, and normally these things weren't that clean. The motorman, you'll notice, rode behind the gate in the first enclosure. You were not permitted to ride on the front of those cars. This looks like a pan of what looks like low V cars. Now we have the gate cars that look like they're on Gun Hill Road, where it turns from Webster into White Plains Road line. Here comes the trolley on the white, under the L on White Plains. So we know that this is in the late 40s at the latest, because they discontinued the trolleys in the Bronx in 1948. So we know it has to be before then. Look at the taxi cabs, the latest style taxis. And there we have the gate cars again running overhead. Those were considered very labor intensive because you needed, as I said, a motorman for between every two cars. That almost looks like Jerome Avenue around Bedford Park Boulevard. This is done in the late 60s to the early 70s, judging by some of the vehicles there. That looks like a Chevy Greenbrier van. Those look like the rebuilt gate cars. The door is back further. These were what they used also in the 1964 World's Fair. These look like low V cars on the same stretch of road. Believe it or not, the other cars that look newer were actually older than these. Those are marker lights up on the top. They originally did not have headlights on these cars. They were added afterwards for use in the subway. That is a sanitation truck. That is the old courthouse at 161st Street on 30, and that's the 30th Avenue coming around the turn, and then it would make the next curve and go into the 156th Street station on 3rd Avenue again. On the extreme left, I believe, is Alexander Avenue as the train comes around the turn into 161st Street. And these, I do believe, are low V cars on there. See, those are deck roof cars again. That subway car on the left side of the frame is a rebuilt car. And those were, you see the door is not on the end, and the next car, the door is on the very end. Okay, now we're at the 169th Street, and this is shortly before abandonment, because you can see the housing projects were already built, and this is in color. And the L was demolished in the early 1970s. They had, on these cars, they had metal signs that they put above the number. There was in that window, they would put the destination signs in all the cars. Yeah, it's definitely 169th Street, and this train is going north because those projects were on the right side, on the east side of the tracks or the train. We're looking north out of the front of the car, and these were cars in the center track that were laid up for use later. Or maybe toward abandonment, because that track dead ends at the right in front of this car. This is taken at the Gun Hill Road station on the lower level. The 3rd Avenue L came into the lower level on White Plains Road, and they would either turn the train around or bring it into the 238th Street yards on the White Plains Road line. This is looking up at the upper level on the White Plains Road train coming into the station. This looks like 149th Street. As you'll see in a second, there's the Viga, and the Viga was on the west side of 3rd Avenue at that point. That's the Viga on the left, so this train is going north on 3rd Avenue, In fact, you can see this is the latter end because there was no center track at this point. Yeah, and here's the 161st Street, the courthouse on the left. As we turn around to go up 3rd Avenue again, that's Alexander Avenue coming in from the right side. We're now riding southbound, coming, it looks like, toward the 169th Street. We're coming in toward Fordham Road. The white building is SM Rose Chevrolet, and that should be Sears. Previous to that was Rogers Department Store. This is probably 238th Street Yard. It's a funny thing, on the 3rd Avenue L, they did not have signals for the local lines. They never did, as far as I can recall. So since there was a signal, and a fairly modern signal, I would say that was on the White Plains Road line. Eventually, they had signals to some extent on the express line, but not on the local at all, because I figured that the stations were apparently close enough, and they figured, well, they had a visual, they could look at them all and see wherever the next train was. That's coming to Williamsbridge Road, because that dinette store was right on Gun Hill Road and Webster Avenue at that point. As a matter of fact, I remember my parents buying a dinette set in that store. And there again is Hearn's department store in the background. And you know this is later on because there's a big platform and there was no express track on this at all. Oh, this is a train coming into the 149th Street station again. See, the train's terminated after they cut out the Manhattan part of the 3rd Avenue L in 1955. The 3rd Avenue L terminated at 149th Street, and all those trains were then serviced at the 238th Street yards on the White Plains Road line of the IRT. Oh, now we're at 183rd Street on the 3rd Avenue L. And that's where the train is coming around the turn into the 183rd Street station. It just came down from Fordham Road. Again, this is near the end of service. Those stations were quite ornate on the 3rd Avenue L, and they were heated strictly by a potbelly stove, and they put out a lot of heat in the winter. They were quite comfortable. This is the train coming into the. It looks like coming into the Fordham Road. Well, now this one's leaving the Fordham Road station, I do believe. It was crossing over the first beginning of the clip. It looked like it was coming across Webster Avenue, going over the New York Central tracks. This is a southbound train coming out of Fordham Road Station. This parking lot was used for people going into Sears. This was shot in front of the SM Rose Chevrolet dealership, and if you note the cars, there's still in the days of graffiti. There's still, these things are quite dirty, unlike today's cars, which are absolutely clean. That train was coming off Webster Avenue, going over the New York Central tracks, going into Fordham Road. This is going over the Cross Bronx Expressway. So this is when they had to raise the L quite a few feet to accommodate the Cross Bronx Expressway, and they had to do this while keeping the elevated trains running. It was quite a feat. They jacked it up a little bit at a time because the train still had to keep running till they got it to the height that it is now. And then the Cross Bronx was built under it after that point. And that's still near the end because that train has graffiti on it. It looks like we're looking on top of the mound where the original Bronx County office building was. The seat of Bronx County at one point. This is Williamsbridge and Webster Avenue at this point. After Fordham Road, the train is actually riding on Webster Avenue north until Gun Hill Road. and then the train turns onto Gun Hill Road for that short stretch, and then makes a turn again under the onto White Plains Road, underneath the White Plains Road train. And here you can see the train as it comes, I do believe, onto it's on Gun Hill Road now, and you're looking east on Gun Hill Road, because there's the Gun Hill Road station in the background. And again, you can see some of the period cars from the early 70s, including a 66 Mustang. And this clip looks like it's the 238th Street yards on Wharf White Plains Road. They have a big circular track running around the yard, and I've been on that. Okay, now we know this is Gun Hill Road, and this is from the New York Central. In fact, what you just saw was a New Haven train, and this is the New Haven train running south from Gun Hill Road. There's the New York Central engine running light going up to Croton Harmon northbound, and here you have a commuter train running southbound. These were electric engines powered off a third rail. If you grew up in the West Bronx in the neighborhood of University Avenue, McCombs Road, and West Tremont Avenues in the 1940s, 50s, and 60s, you no doubt remember the benches that separated University Avenue. It ran from 175th Street north to West Tremont Avenue. For many, the benches were a private country club where events of the day and the week were discussed. Report cards were passed around. If you look closely, you will see and also remember the Park Plaza movie theater, where, as a child, you probably attended those Saturday morning movies that consisted of cartoons and newsreels. The Crosstown number 36 bus, as well as the University Avenue bus number 38, had their stops conveniently located in front of the theater. Those of you who are around or pushing 70 may have started their elementary school at the McCombs School. Back then, you went to elementary school for the first 3 grades and then transferred to either PS 26 or PS 104 for a few more years and then returned again as a middle schooler. Those born after 1940 would only remember McCombs as PS 82 as their junior high school. Along University Avenue were many stores. The Bronx Savings Bank was centrally located along with the Cleaners and Olinsky supermarket. If you like chocolate treats, you might have bought specialty candies at Russ Meyer's, which later became Lohr's. Should you go back today, you would still see the center divide, but there are no longer benches, and the small sapling trees that were planted in the 40s now stand 20 feet high.
Have you ever wished you could have a Bronx childhood reunion with your friends, your classmates, and your memories? Well, now you can. Back in the Bronx magazine is your ticket back to the borough of your youth. And for a limited time, you can get a free 6-month subscription that instantly transports you to the streets and stories that shaped you. Each issue brings you around a dozen true Bronx stories. Shopping on Fordham Road, eating on Arthur Avenue, ice cream sundaes at Crumb's, the kitchen sink at Jan's, summer days at Orchard Beach, cheering in the old Yankee Stadium, even trips to Freedom Land. It's 32 pages of laughter, nostalgia, and Bronx pride. A reunion in print that arrives every 3 months. You'll even receive a free picture of your Bronx building as it appeared in the 1940s, 50s, or 60s, and a free 1958 Jan's menu to stir those sweet memories. Now, this is a limited time offer, so call 1-800-727-6695 today and claim your free 6-month subscription, plus your Bronx building photo and 1958 Jan's menu. Because Back in the Bronx isn't just a magazine, it's the Bronx you remember, brought back to life one story at a time.
With someone like you, and tonight could be the night to on your finger. Oh, darling, hold me tight for tonight.
It's been a long time coming. The anticipation was excruciating, and I am happy that it is here, because this is the rediscovery of one of the great treasures of the Bronx, one of the jewels of the Bronx, the showplace of the Bronx, the Loew's Paradise Theater. The Loew's Paradise Theater was built in 1929 for $4 million. The architect was a fellow by the name of John Eberson, who specialized in what was called atmospheric theaters. The Paradise is considered to be his masterpiece. The idea was that you would come in from your humdrum, ordinary existence into a fantasy world of glamour and opulence, and taken out of your everyday life into a world that you never would have experienced. And people would come here on special occasions. This was the place for the date for teenagers. It is not known about how many people got married after having a date in the Loew's Paradise in the balcony.
It's great to be here at this historic night. Obviously, we've been waiting a long, long time for the reopening of the Loew's Paradise Theater. And this is a landmark, not only in the Bronx, but in the city. It's a very special place with a lot of wonderful memories for a lot of people. So we're looking forward to making new memories for a new generation of Bronxites. And, you know, the Bronx is thriving as a community, and so this is really a symbol of the revival. It's a very special night for us.
Well, it's great to be here. I haven't been here in so many years. I used to come here all the time on dates in high school and college. We used to go all the way up to the balcony. I saw The Godfather here. I saw Godfather 2 here. And this was the greatest place in the world, and I'm just so delighted that this is happening. I remember downstairs they used to have goldfish swimming around, and then upstairs they had blinking stars and the clouds. We always wondered how they made the clouds move. There's just no place like the Loew's Paradise, and there's no place like the Bronx. You know, I was born in the Bronx, and I've lived here all my life and represented it for 28 years, and this is an important piece of the Bronx, so I almost feel like we're being made whole again.
I'm State Assemblyman Jeffrey Dinowitz. I represent part of the Bronx. I grew up in the Bronx. I've lived here all my life, and I spent many, many happy hours at the Loew's Paradise Theater when I was a kid, and also when I was dating my future wife, and even a little bit after that. We haven't been here, of course, in many years, but the fact that the Paradise is back, it shows the tremendous revival that is taking place in the Bronx. So this is really a very exciting day for everybody, I think. And it shows that people have confidence in the Bronx, the fact that somebody was willing to invest the money that they did to bring this landmark back as an entertainment center.
Ladies and gentlemen, on the count of 3, we will reopen the historic and beautiful Loew's Paradise Theater in the Bronx. It is an historic day, not only in the Bronx, but in the city as a whole and in the region. And it is an historic day even in the country, because this theater was built in 1929, just at the start of the Great Depression. We are now in a revival and a renewal that is historic. And here we go. 1, 2, and 3.
Na 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 na
Here comes the 4th Cavalry Stage, right on time, moving along the lonely road through Indian country, heading west. Ha! Ha! Gotta reach the Rocky Mountains by sundown. Up on top, you could be anywhere. The trail doesn't have any signposts after you leave 4th Cavalry. You could be anywhere on the Great Plains in the 1800s, when the West was really wild. Now, this may be Indian territory, and it may look like the Old West, but the time is today, and the place is Freedom Land, a big entertainment park in the Bronx, in the state of New York, just half an hour by subway from Times Square in New York City. Here, they've built the places and the buildings representing 200 years of American history. And riding shotgun across the Great Plains is only one part of the story of our country. Hey, what's happening over there in Chicago? Fire! Look at that! It's the Chicago Fire of 1871. Hurry up, men. We're going to need volunteers for this one. Everybody man the pump. We've got to get water on the fire or the whole city will go. Faster, men. Keep that pump going. Mrs. O'Leary's cow has kicked over a lantern, and the flames are spreading fast. Keep that pump going back there. It's getting out of control. This fireman doesn't look very worried. Here at Freedom Land, they have the Chicago Fire every half hour, every day. And the gas flames behind the windows of those fireproof buildings always go out on schedule. But it's lots of fun because it's make-believe. In Chicago, in 1871, they didn't have fireproof buildings, and the big fire was an important event in American history, brought to life at Freedom Land. Down on Cortlandt Street, they've built little old New York, just the way it was between 1850 and 1890. In those days, horse-drawn trolleys were the latest thing for short trips in the city. If you had to go out of town, maybe as far as 5 miles, you rented a horse if you didn't have one of your own. If you planned a real long trip, 100 miles or more, you took the train. There's the Santa Fe Railroad train, getting ready for the long, dangerous journey to San Francisco. Here's another way people traveled in the 1800s, on a stern-wheel steamboat. All aboard! The paddle wheel starts turning, and away you go. Traveling along, you can get a good idea of how our country looked in the days when there were only a few roads, and the stern-wheelers and riverboats were used to carry most of the heavy freight. The bow of the boat is a good place to stand if you want to see what's coming up around the next bend. If your mother lets you stay there. There's the Santa Fe Special, heading west, just like the days when there was only one railroad line from coast to coast. On board one of the big stern-wheelers at Freedom Land, you take a trip back to the days when there were only a few cities on the east coast of our country, and most of the land west of the Mississippi was a wide-open frontier. So let's go ashore and see some of the other reminders of our past here in this showcase of American history. In the untamed Northwest, you can take a ride in one of the bull boats, traveling past a trapper's cabin back to the time of the historic Lewis and Clark expedition. You'll follow the route of the fur trappers, who were the first white men to see many parts of our country because they had to move farther and farther away from the new villages and towns to trap and hunt. Look, there's a moose looking us over. Don't move, he might charge the boat. There's an Indian carving a totem pole in a village just as it might have looked to a boatload of fur trappers as they kept pushing northwest. These Indians look friendly, but no telling what's coming up around the next bend. If you want to see more of Freedom Land, the best thing to do is go up, way up, high. Riding in an ore bucket from the Tucson Mining Company, high above the buildings and the people. From here, you can see most of Freedom Land and pick out the spots you want to visit next time. 205 acres of fun and tradition. From San Francisco in 1906, across the Great Plains of the 1800s, through the old Southwest of 1890, to the not-so-distant future at Satellite City. 200 years of American history. From the days when herds of buffalo roamed the West to the present and beyond. There are thousands of things to see, too many to look at on this trip, but all of them are fun, and all of them will help you appreciate the facts in your history books. This is history brought to life. The history of the country that gave this place its name, Freedom Land. Now it's time we got back on solid ground again, back to the Bronx in the state of New York. So long.
To save my soul, I can't get a date. My baby's got a tune on Channel 8. White egg and big Cheyenne, coming through the TV, shooting up the land. My baby loved the Western movies. My baby loved the Western movies. The fight was won.